Joe Hodges in the Conoco Phillips Alumni Center on the campus of Oklahoma State University. This interview is conducted on September 19, 2008 as part of the O State Storage Project. And Joe, let's say what years were you at OSU?
Well, I started at OSU in the September of 1941 and went 2 years, volunteered for the service, and went into the service in February of 1943. And this was the time that you didn't stay in the service very long until you were overseas. I was in the service 13 months, and I ended up in North Africa and spent 2 years in North Africa and Italy, and went through Sicily, and got back, was discharged from Camp Chaffee, Arkansas in Thanksgiving of 1946, and my mother and sister were still living here in Stillwater, so I came home and enrolled then in the spring semester of 47 and graduated at midterm 47, 48. So, but I moved to Stillwater in 1937. So, I've seen Oklahoma A&M and OSU grow through the years.
You graduated from Stillwater High School.
Stillwater High School, a Stillwater pioneer, yeah.
And you're a little bit Joe. You're a little bit famous in Stillwater for you MC a lot of the class reunions.
Yeah, we did that up until a few years ago. We had a Stillwater High School class reunion every 5 years, and somehow I became the designated spokesperson. We said spokesman at that time, but for the class, and I was MC of the banquet, and all the Stillwater kiddos did all the work, and I got to come and do the speech making at the banquet and plan the program. I had a good time, and getting ready to go to another one this weekend.
Can you tell us a little about your experiences? Because you had, I guess, sort of a split experience there at OSU with war intervening, but some of the things I think you were an officer, one of the class officers one year.
Well, in Stillwater High School, I started taking journalism classes and ended up writing high school sports for the Stillwater Daily Press at that time. The Stillwater News was a weekly, and they subsequently bought out the Stillwater Press and became the Stillwater News Press. But a man named Otis Weil was editor of the Stillwater Press, and when they sold out, he became information publicity director for the athletic department, and I graduated, and so I went to work for the Oak-Collegian writing sports, and Otis, Mr. Weil, got me all acquainted with everybody at in the athletic department, and this was when Henry Iba was basketball coach. Ed Gallagher was still living and was athletic director at that time. And they didn't have a golf team, but they formed a golf team during those years. And there was an economics professor named Laban Harris who became the golf coach. And I've been just amazed and pleased with the success of the golfing program since that time. Jim Lookabaugh became football coach. I had the misfortune of not going through those good football years when Bobby Fenimore was running wild, because I was running wild over in North Africa and Italy. But so I didn't get to see those winning football teams. But I spent, I guess, 2 years before the war as sports editor of the Oak-Collegian, and of course the entire student press was right over here in a little bit, I guess where the post office is now, and that's where everything was. Clement Trout was head of the journalism school, and so I was able to pay my way through school, and thank goodness for the GI Bill when I got back, because that made it a lot easier. I had a little more time to do things, but I took my degree in journalism with and house organ editing. I had a minor in economics, didn't know why, but ended up after in the newspaper business, ended up a banker for almost 50 years, and so it's been an interesting career for me.
Where did you spend most of your banking career, Joe?
Well, when I graduated in midterm of 47, 48, I went to work for the Shawnee News Star in Shawnee as sports editor, and later became city editor of the Shawnee News Star. And a bunch of my classmates from here at A&M, OSU, that we'd worked with at the Oak-Collegian and in the student publications. There was Jim Scott, Brad Carlisle, Ross Davis, Tommy Steff, a photographer named Lofty Man, and then a gentleman was Spec Gammon, Harold Gammon from down in the Seminole territory here. All ended up at the Odessa American, which was a daily newspaper in Odessa. And I went out to visit with them to have a New Year's party in West Texas. And they tried to get me to join them at the Odessa American. And I told them I was working for a better newspaper than they had. And they said, well, the Chamber of Commerce had a manager has resigned. They're looking for a manager. Why don't you apply for that job? So just on a whim, I did. And they hired me there in Odessa while I was there. So I gave 2 weeks' notice and moved to Odessa, Texas in 1948, and spent 1 year with the Chamber of Commerce and the bank, which was the First National Bank of Odessa at that time, decided they wanted me more than the Chamber did. So I became a banker in January of 1950 and worked. I finally retired when I was 75 years old. In 1998, I retired from the banking business and have been playing golf and fishing and enjoying life since then.
Well, Joe, what can you remember some of the leadership activities, opportunities that you were engaged in when you were a student?
Yeah, I surely do. That I guess as most of us did in those days, came from pretty poor background, that working was necessary. As a matter of fact, I would tell you that my mother, who raised 5 of us kids, my father saw fit to desert us when I was about 6 years old, and she moved us to Stillwater after my older sister had graduated and another sister got married. My brother had graduated from high school in Chickasha in 1929 and had gone to work for the New Soil Conservation Service at that time, and was a good man, but his boss told him, said that you can go a long way in this business, but unless you have a college degree, you're not going to accomplish what you have the ability to do. And so after from 1929 to 1937, he and my mother and my sister Sylvia and I moved to Stillwater. And there was never any question that we were going to go to college. But my brother, Robert, who graduated from here and also got his master's from here, came up and worked on the college farms. And we lived on the dairy out north of town. It was close enough that during football games I could hear the loudspeaker when I was out mixing feed and pumping water for those cows. But we moved to Stillwater, and that it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I was exposed to the college atmosphere while I was still in high school. I started in 9th grade and here and graduated from Stillwater High. But I think Whitehurst Hall was just being finished when we moved here. That North Murray Hall was built. I think there was between 3,000 and 3,500 students at A&M at that time. And one of my real memories was the building of the 4-H Club building, when they sold bricks all over the state of Oklahoma and built the athletic center that's here now. And that on Sunday, the Sunday of Pearl Harbor, I heard the radio at Swim's campus shop about the attack on Pearl Harbor because we didn't have a radio at home. And then on Monday, President Bennett called a student meeting at the 4-H Club building, and with that we heard President Roosevelt's speech there and about the problem at Pearl Harbor. So, and I watched that building. We thought it was magnificent at that time, and it was. And to look at it today, I just get amazed every time I go by. But my interest primarily was in the area of athletics, and it was my privilege to become personally acquainted with those coaches and athletic directors, and it's been interesting me over the years, wherever I've been, that if if you run into somebody who has any interest in basketball or college basketball, and you mention the name Henry P. Iba, they come to, oh, did you know Mr. Iba? Yeah, you know, it's been a good connection for me.
You were also active, I guess, in student government. Were you a class officer?
Yeah, I got involved in not the first year, but during my sophomore year, I got involved in the political campus politics and the representative and the independent parties and all of those things that went with it. And I was elected president of the sophomore class, and then went to the service and went overseas. But I was also president of my junior class and my senior class. So I got my picture in 3 pages of the Redskin.
No, which party were you with, Joe?
Oh, I was independent.
Independent, okay.
Yeah, I was a hometown boy. They wouldn't even let me in a frat house.
What, obviously you talked about some very fond memories you had at OSU. Joe, what experiences, how did those experiences shape you in your life?
Well, it has just the fact that I recognized, I think, and it was just that I was going to college and getting a degree, it just meant so much to you. And I've seen it play out down the years because I've had 3 children, lost 2 of them. I have a son who is 55 years old now, and I got him to college, but he never did make it. He has regretted to this day that he doesn't have a college. He's done very well, but he, even 2 years ago, he was threatening going back to night school and getting enough hours to get his college degree. So, but it has shaped my life. The people I met, the friendships I made, the basic understanding of what counts in life. And I had no earthly idea I would ever end up in the banking business, but I was a banker for almost 50 years, and I wouldn't take for the experience. Dealing with people and those basic lessons you learn, there's no way you can beat it.
There's some special people that made a difference for you at OSU, you recall?
Well, yeah, I really do. I was thinking about the people who were here. I remember Clarence McElroy, Dean McElroy, with a great deal of affection, and had the opportunity to meet and know Henry G. Bennett, not real well, but personally enough to speak to, and he'd speak, across the campus, and his career and the legacy he left has been most impressive to me. And I had a professor named O.D. Duncan, who was in the head of the Department of Rural Sociology. Now, don't ask me why I took sociology courses, but I did. And Dr. Duncan was a real influence on me. He took a personal interest in me and wanted me to become a sociologist. And I said, no, Dr. Duncan, I'm going to get my degree in journalism. And he said, do you mean to tell me you'd rather be a regurgitating reporter than be a sociologist? And I really didn't know what a sociologist did, but he had a great deal of influence on me. And long before that, I had started carrying newspapers in Rush Springs, Oklahoma. We lived there for a while, and then I had a paper out for the Daily Oklahoman here in Stillwater, and my route was out in this area of the college, and so many of the college professors and teachers and deans were my customers. I was their paper boy while I was in high school, and then being involved in student publications and writing stories and doing reporting, and I would do the makeup. And you meet a lot of people and interview a lot of people, and I've said this many times, and I wouldn't suggest it for anybody else, but I think it probably, to be as successful in what I thought journalism was really about in those days, and being a reporter, it takes a wider range of knowledge and background and understanding to be a good newspaper reporter than almost anything else, because if you're going to write intelligently about something, you have to know or learn where to go to get the information to make an intelligible, interesting, understandable story. And so I credit I credit the journalism school and the classes I took here at OSU for helping me be a success in the banking business, because it taught me how to get along with people.
Any particularly special, memorable moments you had at OSU that you can think of?
Many of them. I remember the Sadie Hawkins dances that we used to have, because the first time in my life, and I didn't date a lot in my younger days, and I don't know why, but I didn't think I had the ability to do it. And they had the Sadie Hawkins dance, and a young lady, member one of the sororities, called and asked me for a date for Sadie Hawkins' date, and that was a highlight in my life to be asked for a date from somebody. No, that there were so many things that took place. One, and this is purely a personal thing, but I don't know whether you remember Lewis Stadium, how it used to be before they started in it, but back in 40, 41, and when Lookaball was coach, and when Bobby Fenimore was playing here, and I remember all of those football players, but we didn't very often beat OU. We always said beat OU, but we were playing Oklahoma University here at Lewis Field, and I was sports editor of the Oak Legion, and I don't remember whether this was before the war or after, but I had talked to the press man over at the Oak Legion, and we had published the paper that morning, but I had him pull the lead story and the headline, and I sat up there in that little old press box at Lewis Field as the football game was going, and I was able to write the story of the first 3 quarters, pretty much just a play-by-play, but with the game just about winding down, we had a 1-point lead over OU, and I had a kid on a bicycle down below the press box, and I finished that story, and dropped it down to him, and he bicycled across the campus, and they set up that story and printed it. A&M beats OU, and had a headline, and they had them back over there, and we were distributing newspaper as the fans left the stadium. And
wow.
I considered that to be one of the highlights of my journalistic career. Well, it was taking a chance, though, because it could have gone. But, back in those days, that if you were ahead with a few minutes to go, you're probably going to win that ball game. So, at any rate, but I've always, and nobody believes me when I tell them that story, but it's the truth.
Great. You feel proud, Joe, about where the university's going? You see all the buildings and what's happening?
I don't get back nearly as much as I used to. My sister still lives here, and we used to. Well, Thanksgiving was always spent in Stillwater, but been a lot of things happen in our lives over the course, and I don't get back nearly as often. And every time I come back, it is just unbelievable to me what has happened up here. And last night I drove in with still daylight, and I can't believe what's happening on West 6th Street and all out in that area and all the way across. That I live in Lubbock now, and I know what Texas Tech means to Lubbock. I know what a university can mean to a community. And Stillwater may have been here when Oklahoma A&M was founded here, but Stillwater owes its position, I think, today primarily to the impact of OSU. It just made a tremendous difference. It made very valuable.
Joe, anything we haven't covered that you'd like to say, or some special?
Oh, this is sort of a surprise to both of us. I have not in recent years. My community of interest has shifted so much. I've been in. I left here and went to Odessa, and then ended up with a bank in Uptown Houston, Medical Center National Bank, right in the heart of the Houston Medical Center, and that bank changed hands, and I didn't like the new situation, and so I found a little bank that was available for sale in Abilene, Texas, and so I bought controlling interest of Abilene National Bank in August of 1968 and moved to Abilene, and Abilene became my town. the banker in the town in those days. And of course, there were three universities or colleges there in Abilene Christian, Howard McMurray, and Hardin Simmons. And being the banker in town, I was involved with the leadership of those three universities, and became interested. And then I sold that bank and spent about 11 years in the oil business, and wondered the first few years why I ever spent the years in banking. I made more money in a year and a half in the oil business than I had made in 30 years in the banking business, and a year and a half later I was broke and owed $1.5 million after I sold everything I owned. And I, at 55 years old, got a chance to start paying that $1.5 million back, which I did, and finally ended up with a little bank in Stanton, Texas, which is halfway between Midland and Big Spring, and turned the losing situation around to built it up and got it to a money-making problem. And when I was 75 years old, I sold it and been able to enjoy life since then. But
you stayed out of the oil business.
Stayed out of the oil business. I wouldn't take for the time I wondered while I was in it why I didn't get a degree in geology. It was the most fascinating field I've ever been in. But I guess once a banker, always a banker. You just can't get away from it.
You can start over there again, Joe.
Those of us in student publications our organization was called the Press Club. And anybody involved in any of the student publications, the Oak Legion, the Redskin, the Aggivator, any of these, you could be a member of the Press Club. And our main event each year was to stage the varsity review. And this is Jimmy Baker, who was the drum major that had the first strut, and he formed a dance band. And Jimmy Baker,
collegians.
They had a Sunday afternoon radio program out of Miles Student Store that everybody would attend. It was Brooks when it started, then became Miles. But as president of the Press Club, while I was in school, I drew the chore of being the MC for the varsity review, and we always had a real good time at that. But as a matter of being involved in the Press Club, we began to studies, and we found that Sigma Delta Chi was the professional journalistic fraternity, and so we made arrangements. A group of us went to the National Convention of Sigma Delta Chi in Washington, D.C., and I met some of the officials, and we were invited to request admission and form a chapter of Sigma Delta Chi on the Oklahoma A&M campus. So we applied, and the Oklahoma A&M Press Club became a chapter of Sigma Delta Chi, and I was the charter president of Sigma Delta Chi on the campus.
Great.
And that was something I wanted to remember, and I'd forgotten it.
What do you remember about, that's the campus review, that's been a long history, a tradition, the Oklahoma State Varsity Review.
Oh, yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about Varsity Review?
Well, all the different organizations, both independent organizations and the sororities and fraternities would work up an act, and we would have elimination and competition. A group of judges from the Press Club would select the groups that were going to be in the varsity review, and it was a big affair. And we always had a good time, and dancing and music and jokes, and we talked earlier too about A. Frank Martin and the Cowboy Quartet. I remember all the entertainers that he was responsible for sponsoring. Some of them did well, and of course, I guess everybody knows Jimmy Baker's story, that after leaving here, going to Hollywood and producing movies, and he was just a good old Oklahoma boy that did well, But the varsity review was a big thing in those days. I don't know whether it is still today or not.
Still is. Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, thank you.